All right, hey, I just wanted to check in because I finished Oblivion by David Foster Wallace. This is a collection of short stories. There are 8 in here in total, and I really want to talk about, I think, 3 of them altogether. 3 of the stories in here went completely over my head, I think. Full transparency here, I read about half these short stories a week ago, and then I read all of book 7 of Dungeon Crawler Carl, and then finished the last couple stories last night. So the first couple stories I'm not as fresh up on as the rest of them, but that being said, even the first 2 stories kind of went over my head anyway. The first one is called Mr. Squishy, and it bounces between a couple characters with this Team Delta research stuff of this felonies candy or chocolate or something. I don't fully remember, and I didn't take away any of the major concepts. The first 2 stories, after reading them, I was actually a little worried because I was like, I think all of David Foster Wallace might be way over my head. The second one was The Soul Is Not a Smithy, which was definitely over my head. I didn't take away anything from it. I need to go back and reread these later. And really try to work harder on understanding the first few stories, because I think maybe I could now that I have finished all of these stories. I think maybe I could go through and try to figure it out again, but this is a review based on my first read through. And the reason I even picked this up was because of this next short story, which is Incarnations of Burned Children. It's only like 3 pages in this, and it's phenomenal. I love Incarnations of Burned Children. Essentially, the premise of it is that a little baby is burned by an overturned pot of water that was boiling on the stove, and it's burning the baby, and the mother and the father are trying to cool the baby down. They have his feet in the sink with cold water on, and he's still screaming and screaming. They can't figure it out. They're trying to cool him off as much as they can. A couple minutes go by, and they see a wisp of steam come up from his diaper, and they realize, oh shit, we didn't check in there. And so they take the diaper off, which was burning hot, and the water had been pooling in the diaper this whole time, just burning this baby, and he's been screaming for help, and the parents didn't know how to help him, obviously, because it's a baby and no real words could be exchanged, but they knew he was in pain, and they were trying to solve it, but they were just solving it in the wrong spot. And at the end, the baby learns to escape himself, to free himself of the pain, and he sees himself kind of from an ethereal form. It's a fantastic read. It's amazing. I've read Incarnations of Burned Children, I'm not kidding, maybe 40 times in the last month and a half. I really like the way it's written, and I really like the feeling it gives you of dread. It's fantastic. The next story in this short story collection is Another Pioneer, which is about a boy who is born in this village, and he is able to answer any question correctly and give a good answer. And it kind of starts out with the village people being like, oh, how do we get more food of this thing? And he's able to kind of direct them in that area. And it's all these kind of practical ways of solving problems and things, and he's just able to spew out the answer, and nobody really knows how or why, but he's able to. And the village starts to recognize this as a huge sign of wisdom, and they put him up on this pedestal. They kind of just keep him there, where he's just there to answer questions, and he starts going into this catatonic state where he's shutting down and meditating for long periods of time. And so he's only answering questions during certain times of the month, I believe it was. I can't remember now, but these maybe every few months or something. But there's a little subsect of people that form that are there to just help rephrase villagers' questions so that they don't get so that they get the right meaning out of it that they wanted to, so that he can't give an answer directly to the question that isn't the real question, if that makes sense. I'm doing terribly at explaining this, but I knew that was going to be the case with David Foster Wallace, because this guy was fucking brilliant and I am not. So, but eventually the villagers are asking these deeper questions, and they're starting to get answers that are true, but they don't want to hear these real answers. It's too much for these villagers to hear the answers, and so they start to get scared and resentful of this boy that they've forced up on this pedestal, and they end up burning the fucking village down and leaving, and that's it. I mean, there's definitely more to be taken out of the story, but that was the overall plot of Another Pioneer. And our narrator was telling this entire story to us based off of a guy on a flight telling a story about the boy in the village. But it's a really good one. Good Old Neon is the next story, and after Incarnations of Burned Children, Good Old Neon is by far my favorite of this bunch. It is about a man who, we find out at the beginning, he's talking to us after he's killed himself. And he's speaking about his experiences of not being able to relate to anybody and feeling like a fraud his whole life, feeling like he's just kind of a people pleaser. He changes based on who he's talking to. He goes to a therapist, but he finds that he's only trying to manipulate the therapist's emotions too. There's a fantastic quote, actually. I think I wrote it down here. Yeah. One of the quotes from it that I really liked that I think kind of sums up a lot of the feeling of the story, when he's talking about a girl that he likes. He says, "I never even really saw her. I couldn't see anything except who I might be in her eyes." And I really like that little quote. I think that sums up a lot of the feelings and sentiments in this story. I really enjoyed the story. I thought it was fantastic. It's another one that I need to go back and reread a couple times because I really need to try to get more meaning from these stories. I know that there's so much more meaning in here that I'm just leaving in the pages, and I would like to attain that meaning eventually. I don't know if I'm in the right headspace to be doing it right now, which is why I kind of just did a once through of this, and then I'm going to go back later and really dive into a couple of these stories specifically. The next story was Philosopher and the Mirror of Nature, which, I'll be honest, it was okay. It was about a man who is taking his mother to these appointments, and she is horribly disfigured. Her face is gross as hell, and it's essentially them getting on a bus and having to deal with people looking at them crazy. Again, more meaning to this. There's definitely more meaning in it. I just didn't derive any because of maybe my headspace or tiredness level. I don't know. Oblivion, the main story. I liked Oblivion a lot. It's about a man and his wife having troubles at night trying to sleep. His wife always wakes up and says, "Hey, you're snoring. Wake up. You're snoring. Go lay in the other room, or lay on your side, but mostly go lay in the other room." And this man is getting frustrated because he's like, I know I'm awake when she's waking up and yelling at me, but she's putting me in this sudden state of fright, and it makes it really hard to go into work the next day, and I'm sleep deprived now, and this is difficult. And so he's going and trying to get all this stuff done. He's going to doctors, and eventually goes to like a sleep therapist where he convinces his wife to do this sleep study with him, and she's really resistant the entire time, but it comes back he was snoring, and it's this little bickering fight that I think most relationships have. And it's told so well. And then there's this really, really fucking bizarre moment that I was like, okay, maybe I didn't understand any of this. At the end of the book, suddenly she like wakes up, and it's like, oh, and she's like, oh, you're still my husband, you're my husband, right? And he's like, yeah, I'm your husband. I don't understand what the fuck was happening at the end of this. So another one I gotta fucking go back and reread. But the overall story up until that weird section at the end was a man and his wife arguing over him snoring at night is the basic of it. And again, he just knows people. He just tells the story so well of what would be going through an anxious man's mind at that time. The last story was The Suffering Channel, which is another one that I think I didn't derive enough meaning from, because it's a man who shits art, like literal art pieces. He doesn't sculpt it, mold it, or anything. He just shits in its art. And there's also this looming like 9/11 thing going on the whole time. I wasn't fully sure, and I wasn't fully invested in the last story, I'll be honest with you. So maybe I missed a lot of the major context in it, I'll be honest. I feel like maybe I didn't do some of these stories the justice they deserved, specifically the first two and the last one. I had a really hard time understanding what was going on in the first couple stories. And on the last story, The Suffering Channel, I was just kind of ready for the stories to be over, I'll be honest with you. I really enjoyed them, but it was very mentally taxing. And I think it's just a testament to how I read stories. I think I read short stories wrong. I've been struggling. I struggled with the Night Shift Stephen King collection and Joe Hill's The Black Phone for the same reason, where I get so into the story that I just get bummed when it's over and I have to go to the next one, to the point where it almost turns me off from wanting to keep reading for the day. And I felt that with those stories. I felt that with these stories. So it's nothing to do with the stories themselves. It has to do with me and how I'm reading these stories. But if anybody else has an experience that's similar to that, please let me know, and let me know how you fixed it or changed it, or how you read short stories, because like I said, I think I might be reading them wrong and not really getting the most enjoyment out of them that I could be. So, I don't know. But overall, those are my thoughts of Oblivion stories. I really, really liked Incarnations of Burned Children. I really, really liked Another Pioneer. I really liked Good Old Neon. And I liked Oblivion. The rest of them were alright. I just didn't get as much from them, I guess. So, anyways, I appreciate y'all for watching, and I hope this review made sense in some shape or form. I know that this one, like I said, that guy's a fucking genius, and I am definitely not. And so it's awesome looking into the mind of a genius like that and seeing what he's written, but it's also very, very difficult. And I don't know if I was personally ready for the task of like actually taking what he was saying and transfiguring it into my head, transporting it into my head, and deriving the meaning that I needed to derive from it. So I think I need to go back and give it another shot. But I do highly recommend it to anybody, especially Incarnations of Burned Children. It is page 114 here. Just Google Incarnations of Burned Children. Literally look at this. It is that and this. I love that story so much, and it gives you a good feeling of how he writes, because his words you do have to pay attention to a lot more than some, especially modern authors. So anyways, I appreciate y'all for sticking around this long, and thanks.